Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So, Fabio Wardley is now officially the mandatory challenger for the regular WBA title, which is held by Kubrat Pulev. They have ordered that fight. Get the graphic up on screen here. You can see this was reported by Ring Magazine. WBA orders Pulev to defend regular belt against Fabio Wardley. Now, we knew this was coming, but now it's been made official. Now, the interesting thing here is it says the WBA have now officially ordered Kubrat Pulev to defend his WBA regular heavyweight belt against Fabio Wardley next. The winner must then face Michael Hunter. Michael Hunter has been out in the wilderness for several years now, and he's been, I want to say, frozen out by Eddie Hearn potentially, and Sauerland, and maybe even Frank Warren, who knows? Perhaps even Ben Shalom. He was supposed to fight under Ben Shalom against Hughie Fury, but Hughie Fury pulled out. Some of you guys may remember that. So Michael Hunter out in the wilderness, and he hasn't seemed, at least in interviews, that frustrated about it. He doesn't appear to be a fighter who's particularly in love with boxing. He's someone that was raised in a boxing family. His dad was a heavyweight contender, kind of fringe contender back in the days. And some of these guys just box because they were raised boxing. They don't necessarily really love it. And Michael Hunter appears to be one of those guys. So if Fabio Wardley gets past Kubrat Pulev, if that fight goes ahead, and I don't see why it wouldn't, then Michael Hunter's going to need to be very hungry. He's going to need to find some passion for the game from somewhere going up against Fabio Wardley. The Michael Hunter who beat Martin Bakole back in the days, I would confidently pick to beat Fabio Wardley. But the current version, who we've seen over the past few years, I'd favor Wardley to beat him. But anyway, another interesting point here is that Alexander Usyk has been granted a 2-year extension to his mandatory defense period to allow him to pursue bigger fights. That is shocking, and that should never be allowed. The thing is, though, that Usyk probably won't need the 2-year extension because he's going to fight Daniel Dubois for Undisputed, but we've just had an Undisputed between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, right? So I don't see why the sanctioning body would grant another exception, and this year for 2 years, for 2 years to facilitate Usyk taking bigger fights, right? And as I say, it shouldn't matter because Usyk says he's just going to fight Dubois next. It was originally supposed to be the winner of Dubois-Parker, but that fight obviously didn't happen for obvious reasons. So Dubois next, and then he says he's going to have a show fight after that, which basically means an exhibition, maybe against Alex Pereira, the UFC fighter, and then call it a day. I hope he sticks to that, Alexander Usyk, if he gets past Dubois in their rematch and sails off into the sunset. Potentially that could mean that Usyk retires by the end of this year or very early next year. And so, as I say, he won't need this 2-year extension that the WBA have granted him. But the point, obviously, is that they shouldn't be granting any champion 2 years, right, to fulfill a mandatory obligation. His last mandatory, Alexander Usyk, with the WBA, I think, was actually Daniel Dubois, funny enough. So he's now fighting him again when Dubois is IBF champion. So, yeah, there's that. If we have a look at the heavyweight rankings here, you'll see that with the WBA, obviously, Alexander Usyk champion, Kubrat Pulev regular champion. The WBA have still got this ridiculous 2-tier champion system. And then number 1 contender, Fabio Wardley. Number 2 contender, Michael Hunter. Michael Hunter has actually been fighting over the past year or so against obscure opposition. And he fought in some type of boxing tag team tournament thing where he only had to box 1 round, I think 2 or 3 times in his weird tag team tournament thing. It's actually on his BoxRec page if you have a look on there. So he's been active of sorts. And of course he did fight, God, I forget the guy's name now. A fringe contender who barely threw any punches against him. I forget, the guy's name escapes me. He's a black American guy. And Michael Hunter beat him easily. So yeah, he has been active, but against very poor opposition. Fabio Wardley would be a big step up for Michael Hunter, actually, in terms of his recent bouts. Now, as far as Fabio Wardley versus Kubrat Pulev, I would favor Wardley strongly in the fight. Kubrat Pulev is a veteran. Been around a long time. You can see his BoxRec page here. 32-3. Those losses were to, let me think now. Vladimir Klitschko, of course. Anthony Joshua and Derek Chisora. The Chisora loss was controversial. A lot of people feel like Pulev actually deserved to win that one. And then he became WBA regular champion in his last fight, beating Manuel Char in his home country and his home city of Sofia, Bulgaria. All right, so that's Kubrat Pulev. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with him. Well into his 40s now, seen better days. He was a decent amateur, if you weren't aware. He has kind of the old school Eastern European style of, really leaning back, fencing with the left hand. His style's modified over the years a little bit, because when he first turned over pro, it was really that classic Eastern European upright, fencing with the left jab, bouncing in and out of range with the feet, as so many Eastern European fighters do with the old, what they call the Soviet style, right? So he's modified his style a little bit over the years, but he still retains many elements of it. And if this was the Pulev that fought Klitschko, although he got blasted out in the fight, right, in 5 rounds, was down several times, but still, if it was the Pulev of old, I think this would be a very awkward fight for Fabio Wardley, to be honest with you. Yes, he's got the power, and he's got the youth and whatnot, but Kubrat Pulev is good at fiddling his way through fights. Holding if he has to, using his jab. His jab is his primary weapon. His right hand has never been particularly effective. I'm not sure whether Kubrat Pulev is a converted southpaw, but he's always had a very powerful left jab, which seems more powerful than his right hand. I mean, I've seen him hurt people. He actually hurt Vladimir Klitschko with his left jab, rather than hurting Klitschko with a right hand. So, yeah, that's Kubrat Pulev. If it was the Pulev of old, I reckon it's a very awkward fight for Wardley. But the current version of Pulev, Wardley should be able to deal with him. He's still got some tricks up his sleeve, Pulev, in terms of spoiling and surviving and whatnot. But Wardley should be able to get the job done, because he's got those gears that he can go through. He's physically strong. He's able to shrug you off when you want to hold him. We saw that against Fraser Clark. So, yeah, it should be a Wardley win. But it'll be interesting to see where this fight gets made. If it's in Sofia, Bulgaria, or if it's in, a neutral country, or if it's in the UK. Because if it's in Bulgaria, that obviously favors Kubrat Pulev. Not that he will necessarily win if the fight is in Bulgaria, but he'll have certain advantages by way of boxing politics, I would assume. The judges maybe, the referee maybe, etc. So, yeah, that will give Pulev more of a chance to win if it is in Bulgaria. If it's in the UK, yeah, surely Fabio Wardley all day. So let me know what you guys think about this fight in the live chat or in the comments. Fabio Wardley versus Kubrat Pulev. The fight hasn't been officially announced. Let me just make that clear. It's just that the fight has been officially ordered by the WBA. So it's supposed to happen next. If not, Pulev gets stripped. That's assuming Fabio Wardley wants to take the opportunity and doesn't plan to go in a different route with one of the other sanctioning bodies. So we'll see about that. Anyway, on to another little bit of news, or at least a point of discussion. We just had the press conference, kickoff press conference for Canelo Alvarez versus William Scull. We'll be having this fight next, obviously. There you can see Turki Al-Sheikh in the middle. So now he is assuming the role of a promoter, because he hasn't really been doing this before from what I can remember. He's had Frank Warren or Eddie Hearn in the middle of the fighters. Now he's in the middle. And as you can see, there's the Ring Magazine belt. And then they've got this Fatal Fury belt. And there was a moment during this face-off when somebody tried to hand Turki Al-Sheikh the WBC belt to hold as well, and he refused it. Now, some people are taking that to mean he wants to basically do away with the major sanctioning bodies, and that's why he doesn't want them in the picture. And some of you may remember that Al Heyman tried to do this. PBC tried to do this when they first launched in America many, many years ago. They didn't like the fighters bringing the belts into the ring and all that type of stuff. But ultimately, it didn't work. Ultimately, the sanctioning bodies had their way, and PBC and Al Heyman had to concede. Now, it's possible that Turki Al-Sheikh is doing the same thing here. He's just launched this boxing league with Dana White. But it's also possible that it's just a case of Turki Al-Sheikh not wanting to hold too many belts. He's only got 2 shoulders at the end of the day. The belts were on display at the press conference on Canelo's table. Some of you may not have caught that, but the WBC belt was there, as well as, I guess, the IBF. And was it the IBF or was William Scull got the IBF? But the other belts that Canelo has with the major sanctioned bodies, they were there. Okay, so I don't know whether it was Turki Al-Sheikh refusing the WBC belt because he plans to get rid of all these sanctioning bodies, or whether it was just a simple case of I can only carry 2 belts at a time comfortably, so let me prioritize my belts. The Fatal Fury belt and the Ring Magazine belt, because obviously Turki Al-Sheikh owns Ring Magazine now. Anyway, Canelo versus William Scull. Here we have the 2 fighters on screen. We all know about Canelo Alvarez. William Scull is a Cuban, 32 years of age, 22-0. I think he's only got about, in fact, let me check his box rec on my screen. He's only got 9 KOs, so not a puncher's record. He's 5'11 and a half, so a shade under 6 feet tall. He actually turned pro in Argentina and had, I want to say, the first half of his career in that country before randomly switching locations and basing himself in Germany for the next half of his career. And that's where he's been since. He has German residency apparently, and that's where he's been fighting. So he has beaten the likes of Vladimir Shishkin. That was in his last fight. He's beaten, obscure opposition other than Vladimir Shishkin. And Vladimir Shishkin isn't that well known. But just to run through some of the names on his record, people like Sean Hemphill. Yeah, me neither. Never heard of him. Christian Rios, Abel Adriel. So it's not a who's who of the super middleweight division that William Scull has fought. It's a who's he. Right? This guy's really been fighting in obscurity. And so this will be a massive step up for him against Canelo Alvarez. Will he be able to handle the occasion? Normally with Cubans, they can handle the occasion because most of them have such extensive amateur careers and they fight in big tournaments all around the world in front of hostile crowds, so on and so forth. They usually are not fazed, but we don't know how William Scull will deal with this since, as I say, he's been fighting in Germany for several years now. And he wasn't one of the elite Cuban fighters. Cuba obviously has this long tradition of having a very, very strong amateur system with many great Olympic champions and world champions in the amateurs and all that kind of stuff. William Scull, to my understanding, to my knowledge, I'm sure he was a solid amateur, but he wasn't one of the top Cubans on the amateur scene. All right, so perhaps he will be affected by the occasion. We shall see. Anyway, Canelo Alvarez takes him on in their upcoming bout. And it will be undisputed all over again because Canelo Alvarez was obviously stripped to this belt. It was given to Scull. I say given. He did fight for it against someone. In fact, did they give it to him outright or did he fight somebody for the vacant belt? I forget now. But yeah, he has the belt. And now Canelo gets to do undisputed again. Presumably this is to really bolster the profile of the Terence Crawford fight, because selling it as undisputed makes it more appealing maybe to the public and certainly makes it more appealing to Terence Crawford. He would love to be undisputed in 3 weight divisions, this time jumping up from 154 where he last fought to 168 against Canelo Alvarez. Again, all of this is contingent on Canelo actually getting past William Scull. So let me know what you guys think about this fight in the comment section below. William Scull's got plenty of height and reach on Canelo, but most fighters do, don't they? And it doesn't really seem to make much difference to him. He's got such skill and strength and power that he's able to overcome a size disadvantage relatively easily. I mean, Canelo is listed at 5'7" and a bit, and I reckon that's what he is. William Scull, 5'11" and a half. Canelo's been in there against guys like, for example, Jaime Munguia, who must be about 6 foot. Danny Jacobs back in the days, who was maybe 6'1". So this is not the kind of height difference or height disadvantage, if you want to call it that Canelo hasn't seen before. So yeah, there you go. Canelo Alvarez versus William Scull. Now, the interesting thing is, Richard Schaefer has all of a sudden popped back up. Get your popcorn ready. Richard Schaefer, right? He is apparently now an advisor to Canelo Alvarez. I'm not sure why Canelo has decided to bring Richard Schaefer in as his advisor. I know they must have had some type of relationship back in the days when Schaefer was still with Golden Boy, but why bring him in now? You know, he could have brought him in years ago, presumably. So, yeah, he's brought Richard Schaefer back into the fold. Maybe it's to troll Oscar De La Hoya. I don't know, because, you know, Schaefer and De La Hoya fell out when Schaefer left the company. And I think there might have been some kind of no competition clause. But surely it wouldn't have been this long, because they fell out and Schaefer left Golden Boy many, many, many years ago. So anyway, it's amusing to see Richard Schaefer back in the mix in a big fight like this as Canelo Alvarez's advisor. Get your popcorn ready. And lastly, you've got Jim Lampley returning to the commentary position. And this will be for the Ring Magazine Times Square card, the Fatal Fury City of Wolves, on May 2nd. Now, as I understand it, as far as I'm aware, this commentary will be for the Ring Magazine's YouTube channel. I don't think it will be for DAZN, which presumably will be the primary broadcaster for this show. It will be for Ring Magazine's YouTube channel. And I say this because he didn't say anything about being a commentator for DAZN. I haven't seen DAZN say anything about Jim Lampley doing commentary for them. But what I have seen is Ring Magazine on the YouTube channel having commentary during certain fights. For one of the big shows, was it the I can't remember which show it was now. It may have been the undisputed Beterbiev Bivol rematch card. But one of the recent Saudi cards anyway, the Ring Magazine YouTube channel had Teddy Atlas doing commentary for them. You know the way that, for example, True Geordie on his YouTube channel, when he live streams during a lot of these big fights and he and his boys will do commentary? Yeah, that's what Ring Magazine do as well on their channel. So presumably that's what Jim Lampley will be doing. Unless, as I say, we hear otherwise and he ends up on DAZN. So, yeah, what do you guys think of Jim Lampley returning to commentary? I thought he was great during the HBO days with Max Kellerman, Larry Merchant, and they had different fighters swapping in and out. Lennox Lewis, George Foreman, Roy Jones. I thought that the dream team was Larry Merchant, Max Kellerman, Jim Lampley, and Roy Jones Jr. I thought that four was the best. After that, you could swap out Roy Jones and put Manny Stewart in, because Manny Stewart was great as well. I thought Lennox Lewis was poor as an HBO commentator personally. But yeah, Manny Stewart and Roy Jones as, the boxers were great. George Foreman also was kind of funny. He always used to go back and forth with Larry Merchant. They always had their little beefs. But yeah, so Jim Lampley, I'm sure he's not as smooth on the mic as he used to be. And in fact, one of the things that has always been a bugbear of mine with regards to UK boxing commentators is that very few of them have got a good broadcast voice. It doesn't seem to be something that UK broadcasters really prioritize when they are recruiting commentators. They don't look for people that have a great broadcast voice. But in America, they do. They really look for that. They want someone who's got a voice that, cuts through on the broadcast and sounds commanding and so on and so forth. And Jim Lampley certainly had that. A great, great, great broadcast voice. Arguably, maybe the best broadcast voice in American commentary historically, or at least one of them. Who had a better broadcast voice than Jim Lampley? Never mind the stuff that he said, because some people will criticize things he said. being biased in favor of certain HBO fighters. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking purely about his broadcast voice. Fantastic, okay? But since he's an older guy now, and he hasn't been commentating, at least not on major fights, for quite a while, he may be a bit rusty. As I say, I don't expect him to be as smooth as he was before, but it's still good to see him back in the mix as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, there you go. Jim Lampley returning to commentary for the May 2nd card in Madison Square Garden, Fatal Fury, City of Wolves. I'm just going to briefly get to the live chat. This is not going to be a long stream. Just wanted to get through some boxing stories here. But we'll get to the live chat now. Let's have a look who's in here. We've got Mr. Luca, big up for the super chat. In fact, let me just check if there's any other super chats here. No, just Mr. Luca. So big up Mr. Luca. He says, Dubois and Parker for Usyk. For me, for Usyk. Yeah, a lot of people are really backing Joseph Parker. They want Alexander Usyk to fight him. Personally, I think Usyk should retire now. I don't think Usyk owes anyone anything. And he should walk away from the sport right now. I don't think that Dubois has any kind of real case warranting a rematch. So I think he should walk away. But if he chooses to continue, and it seems he is, he says 2 more fights, he wants the Dubois rematch and then a show fight and then sail off into the sunset. And I wouldn't begrudge him for not fighting Joseph Parker. Because again, folks, this is a never-ending thing in boxing. This is what Lennox Lewis talked about when he first became WBC champion. He said that he didn't want to... He basically said he wanted to go out on top. He saw so many of his heroes growing up, like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, and so on, carry on far longer than they should have, way past their sell-by date. And he said the reason for them doing that is because there's always a new challenge. There's always some up-and-coming young guy who people want you to fight, who people think that you should fight, who the public feel like you owe them a fight against, you know? There's always somebody on your heels who the public want to see you fight. You, as a fighter, have to be able to resist the temptation to bow to the public pressure when you've been such a great champion as Alexander Usyk has. So I don't feel like he owes Joseph Parker anything. I don't feel like he owes any of the heavyweight fighters out there anything. So if he just fights Dubois and then fights Pereira or whatever and then sails off into the sunset, I'm cool with that. Got no issue with it. Nothing against Joseph Parker, but Alexander Usyk has come along and done everybody in, right? So he deserves respect. He done Anthony Joshua twice. He done Dubois. He done Fury twice. If this was a 32-year-old version of Usyk, then damn straight I'd be calling for him to fight Joseph Parker after that, because he'd have enough time to really build a serious, deep heavyweight resume. But the guy's 38. So at this stage, I think he should be retiring. I don't think he should be trying to go on some long run as heavyweight champion. That's my take on it anyway. So I certainly would not begrudge him not fighting Joseph Parker after, presumably if he beats Dubois. He doesn't fight Parker after that, I've got no issue with it. As long as he's planning on retiring and not keeping all the belts. So, yeah, that's my take on that. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Afro Jam says Howard Cosell as before them, or was before them. Okay, I guess he's responding to somebody else. Godo Frog says Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant were the best duo. Yeah, the HBO team was a fantastic commentary team. Loved them. And there were different combinations, as I say. It was Larry Merchant along with... Larry Merchant was like... I don't know. Sometimes he did running commentary, but other times he would just like kind of come in and out of the commentary here and there. But yeah, Jim Lampley was obviously the lead commentator, and he had a great voice for it. Presumably still does have a pretty good voice for it. Max Kellerman, even though Max Kellerman comes across as a donut, doesn't come across like a, somebody you'd really want to be around in interviews. But on a professional level, as a commentator, I thought he was fantastic, Max Kellerman. He also had a great broadcast voice, by the way, Kellerman. Great broadcast voice. So again, that's testament to what I was talking about. How in America, broadcasters like HBO, Showtime, they're looking for more than just somebody with boxing knowledge. Somebody who's maybe got friends in the industry. Because that's what it seems to be in the UK. Is like, you get a job as a commentator through being friends with someone at, let's say, Sky or TNT, or, you know, friends with a promoter. It doesn't seem to be on the merit of your commentating ability. That's one of my real bugbears with UK commentary. It's like some old boys club where you get your foot in the door based upon who you know and not how good you are. First Round Boxing says someone should sign Kellerman. Yeah, I'm not sure what Kellerman's doing these days. He got let go from ESPN, didn't he? So, not sure where he is or what he's doing. Maybe he's going to reignite his rap career. For those of you who don't know, Max Kellerman used to be a rapper back in the days. Oh, yeah. You can actually see him rapping on YouTube. So, it's not just me. Although I was a hell of a lot better than Max Kellerman. In fact, let me put it on screen here. If you haven't yet checked out this Rumble channel, it's got several of my old tracks on there. The most recent one uploaded was called New World, and that's one of the more recent tracks I recorded. I say recent, it was like, 6 years ago. Recorded that in 2019. That's called The New World. A lot of people are liking that track. A lot of people are liking Brixton 98, but especially Wounded in Action. People are loving that track. They're loving the flow, the bars, everything. They're saying I'm going in. I think somebody said Unk. They call me Unk. Unk went in with fire emojis all over the place. And of course, Moses. Loads of people love the Moses track that I did back in 2014. Yeah, fire, if I don't say so myself. But yeah, anyway, Max Kellerman also used to be a rapper. Maybe he's gone back. Maybe he's gone back to his rap career. Who knows? But yeah, he definitely had a great broadcast voice. Guyon says Kellerman always seemed like a bit of a dork. 100%. J.A. says, where in Brixton are you from? From Loughborough. First Round Boxing says, Edwards is a good commentator, but yeah, the voice. Yeah, Edwards is an example of somebody who has good boxing knowledge, who knows how to break down the action in front of him, but his voice is terrible. I mean, Sonny Edwards sounds like, I don't know what, a mouse with cotton wool stuffed up its nose. That's literally what Sonny Edwards sounds like. Like he's got cotton wool stuffed up his nose when he's talking. So, as good as his analysis might be, the voice is terrible. Just being real. Terrible voice. Workstation says, I thought he was Max's brother who was the one who rapped. No, Max rapped himself. His brother, I don't know whether he rapped as well, but his brother, of course, got killed by a boxer who infamously broke another boxer's jaw in the ring. I forget the guy's name now, but he was a scumbag. I think he went to prison for murder eventually, this boxer. But he was a black American guy with dreads and, or twists. I think he had twists. Anyway, black American boxer who lost on points to another black American guy. And then after the fight, he sucker punched him in the ring and broke his jaw. Absolute scumbag. I think he's still in prison. James Butler, thank you, Workstation. Yeah. What an absolute scumbag that guy was. He ended up killing Max Kellerman's brother. And I think they were friends or whatever, but because the guy was so shiesty and whatever, yeah. Man done him in. J.A. says, I agree. Boatsy should also not be doing commentary. Yeah, Boatsy is not a good talker. The Asian Jay Walker says, I really want Dylan White to start doing commentary. Jay Wood says, David Haye is good. Yeah, David Haye is pretty good. David Haye has charisma. So even though he doesn't have the most amazing broadcast voice, he's not terrible. He has charisma. And it's all part of the entertainment. David Haye is entertaining. First Round Boxing says, love Jim Lampley, but not sure how I feel about him coming back. Ex-WWE commentator Jim Ross is in the AEW now, and it's not the same. The Asian Jay Walker says, I enjoy his sense of humor. I guess you're talking about David Hay. Wave says, thoughts on Anthony Joshua on a broadcast. AJ's not too bad when I've heard him do tiny little brief bits of commentary, but I don't think he's good enough to be a proper commentator. Jupiter's String says, Paulie is my favorite. Yeah, Paulie was great. It's a shame that he's been snubbed by all these major broadcasters. I guess he just keeps it too real. Jupiter's String says, Hatman, was it you who was saying that commentators used to poke fun at fighters? Yeah, particularly in America. They used to poke fun at fighters and troll the fighters during the fight and stuff like that, which used to be quite funny, I'm not even going to lie. On the old ESPN broadcasts and, other network boxing, they used to do it quite a lot, and it was funny. Shout out to KO for the super chat. He says, Conor Benn can KO Eubank. His performance versus Orozco was good given his size and engine. Hearn said Conor Benn only had 3 weeks camp for his US bouts. I can believe that. And that Orozco guy actually tested positive, ironically, right? Because Conor Benn was on the run, in the UK at least, right? From the UK, following his positive tests. But that Orozco guy tested positive after the Conor Benn fight. I'm not sure how many of you guys are aware of that. Did that contribute to how incredibly durable he was? Now, can he KO Eubank? Anything is possible. I suspect he won't, though. Maybe I'll be completely wrong. I suspect he won't. I suspect Eubank will win the fight on points. But we shall see. There's somebody saying here that I love Paulie in the Usyk Bellew fight. He called out the BS bias commentary towards Bellew. He did indeed. And maybe that's why he never got the call back. Maybe that's why they cut him. If you're too real as a commentator, they're not going to want to keep you on long term, are they? Most broadcasters. Iron Fist says, since he was mentioned, are there any, or is there any news, I guess you meant to say, about a potential next fight for Anthony Joshua? Not as far as I heard. I just heard Eddie Hearn reiterating what he's already said over the past few months, which is if they can't get Tyson Fury, they'll take the Dubois rematch. And it doesn't appear at the moment as though they'll be getting Tyson Fury. Eddie Hearn says there's been no discussions, not even one conversation about doing the Fury fight, as in a conversation with Frank Warren or Spencer Brown. So, yeah, who knows what AJ's doing right now? Maybe he's waiting on Daniel Dubois. Perhaps he was waiting to see what happened in the Dubois-Parker fight. And best believe Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua would have been praying for a Parker win. They would have been praying for a Parker win. Scouse Farm says, I think Chris batters him from start to finish. Wave says, Johnny Fisher versus Dave Allen, May 17th, announced Hatman. Yeah, I saw that on Instagram, actually. So I may cover that in a separate video or in another live. We can go into that one. Johnny Fisher versus Dave Allen, May 17th. The rematch. I'm glad that Johnny Fisher has gone straight back in there against Dave Allen. I think it's the right thing to do. I think Johnny Fisher can beat Dave Allen, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people are talking about Dave Allen got robbed and this, that, and the other, but Johnny Fisher basically punched himself out trying to knock Dave Allen out in the early going. I'm not sure whether he did that because he was nervous, because obviously they sparred back in the days, and by Johnny Fisher's own admission, Dave Allen beat the living daylights out of him. And yeah, it may have been a long time ago, but it's still the same man that did that to you. And Johnny Fisher didn't have a whole heap of amateur fights. Very inexperienced. So something like that might still linger in the back of his mind, you know? And he is a fast starter in general. Johnny Fisher. But knowing how tough Dave Allen is, he should have been looking to pace himself better. But instead he came out like the Rumford Bull, you know, living up to that name, trying to chin Dave Allen early, and he just ran out of gas, and that allowed Allen to come back into the fight and start hitting him with big shots and eventually hurting him, dropping him. And from there on in, it was a life and death struggle for Johnny Fisher. And Matt says they still have the same in darts. Wayne Mardell will start taking the P if it's a boring game and has genuine banter. Seems like boxing forgets that it's an entertainment sport indeed. I completely agree. That's why I like the Triller commentary. People can scoff at that, but I thought it was hilarious with Snoop Dogg and, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, not every bout is going to be exciting. You know, maybe you could have two commentary teams. Maybe you could have a commentary team to handle most of the undercard fights, which are more like more humorous team. Then for the more serious fights higher up the card, you could bring in commentators that are maybe not going to rinse the fighters so much. Let's just put it that way. Not saying they have to be boring. Hell no. But commentators that are going to be a bit more respectful towards the fighters. But lower down the card, you could have more Triller type commentary. Because, you know, if a fight is dead and boring, then you need someone to liven it up. Mark Hatch says we need Piers Morgan in boxing. We don't need Piers Morgan on planet Earth. Never mind Piers Morgan in boxing. Good God, man. What a shill he is. What a shill Piers Morgan. What an absolute phony that man is. The biggest shill in UK broadcasting is Piers Morgan. Terrible. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. That guy wanted people like me. And those of you who know, you know what I mean when I say people like me. Those of us who refused to bow to the pressure, right? He wanted people like me to be ostracized from society. Not be allowed to go in a supermarket. I mean, come on. That guy is now being used by Rupert Murdoch as like this free speech advocate. Are you having a laugh? Are you having a laugh? Talk about shill. Controlled opposition. It's Piers Morgan all over. That guy doesn't belong on planet Earth. Anyway, shout out to Matt for the super chat. It says the first fight between Fisher and Allen was the worst scorecard in 10 years. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. But I hear you. I hear you. Shout out to Matt for the super chat as always. Ayed says Oscar on commentary was the best. Oscar De La Hoya. I'm not sure if have I heard? I maybe have heard Oscar De La Hoya on commentary at one point. Scouse Farmer's got it right. He says we need Piers Morgan in prison. Seriously. The stuff that guy was advocating for, I mean, he wouldn't have been out of place in Nazi Germany. Yeah? Some of us don't forget because we were the ones who were, you know, ostracized by society and they wanted us to lose all of our rights and everything. And Piers Morgan is one of the people calling for that. Yeah, I'm never going to forget that in my whole life. Piers Morgan would not have been out of place in the SS. What a joke. And now they're putting him up there like he's some kind of bastion of free speech. What a sick joke. Mark Hatch says, yeah, I wasn't serious. All right. Well, I'm serious about what I say about Piers Morgan, that's for sure. Dear, oh dear, that guy, what a shill. Shout out to Ty Joseph. Shout out to Singh, a Friday afternoon delight with Hatman. Big up. Okay, Anza says, Ike Ibeabuchi is still trying to get a fight. Do you think you could fare better against Jake Paul and Tyson? Fewer miles, but still ancient in boxing. All right, it's an interesting, an interesting question. I really can't say because he looks aesthetically in good shape for his age, right? And he's younger than Mike Tyson. But the guy did hard time in, I think it was a federal penitentiary in the United States, several decades. If you're doing hard time eating rubbish prison food and living in that cramped environment in your little cell, I mean, yeah, he gets his wreck and all that, but I've seen the training footage that Ibeabuchi has posted up on his YouTube channel, and he looks terrible, right? He looks terrible hitting the bag. He looks terrible moving around. He's still got all the muscles, but in terms of his boxing movement, he looks terrible. So, I don't know. And can he even take a shot? You know? Can he take a shot anymore? Maybe he's sparring out there in Nigeria, but are his sparring partners really trying to hit him hard? You know? Because Ike Ibeabuchi was crazy before his several decades in the federal penitentiary. I can't imagine he's any less crazy now. So his sparring partners might be very cautious about hitting him hard, you know? So yeah, Ike Ibeabuchi. Carlton Palmer says these old guys need to be protected from themselves. Yeah. Matt says, have you seen Oliver McCall is trying to make a comeback at 59? Already had a comeback fight this year. I mean, he must be trying to challenge someone to actually drop him for the first time ever. Oliver McCall, never down in a fight. Can you imagine? And he fought plenty of massive punchers. Was obviously Mike Tyson's sparring partner for years. Apparently never went down in sparring against him. At the age of 59, still trying to box. I think he actually did box. You say he's trying to come back. I want to say Oliver McCall actually did box. Yeah, I want to say he did box recently. And maybe got a win. Somebody asking me about KSI's fight. I really don't pay that much attention to the Misfit stuff. Once in a while, I'll, you know, watch some of it on YouTube once it's uploaded there. Because some of it is quite funny, but I really don't follow. I don't know who this guy is, Danis. I might have seen him at one point, but as I say, because I don't really pay attention, I forget who's who. I obviously know Jake Paul, because he's kind of moved on from Misfit stuff. Logan Paul, KSI I know. And the other one I know is Salt Pappy, Anderson Gibb, and Slim. Those two like Arab boys with massive noses. Who fought each other. That was crazy. Okay, somebody says McCall actually had 2 fights recently. Yeah, Oliver McCall and all these old guys, Ike Ibeabuchi. At least Oliver McCall didn't do 20 years in prison. You know, so he's been in the gym probably solidly since he was regularly boxing back in the 90s. Maybe little stints out of the gym here and there. But Ike Ibeabuchi literally did hard time in the federal penitentiary, like 2 decades, more or less. So, you know, they say that people get left to rot in prison, right? Yeah, literally, you deteriorate physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. That's what happens to you in prison. And when you've done that long, there's going to be loads of rust. And one thing that happens, obviously, in the penitentiary, especially when you do a lot of time in there, is those guys are banging the weights. And when you lift too many weights, it starts to mess with your muscle memory for boxing, your biomechanics for boxing, and you become like less fluid, really stiff. And that's how Ibeabuchi looks in the training footage. It looks like someone that's just been banging weights for 20 years and not really doing much boxing training. So the fluidity just isn't there. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, do you think Jake Paul would beat Tommy Fury in a rematch at this point? Yes. I want to say he would. Because Tommy Fury hasn't been active. Jake Paul has. Jake Paul's still improving. So, if they fought next, I would say yes. But if Tommy Fury comes back and has a few fights, then I might change my mind. So I'm basing this on activity and Jake Paul having, as far as I'm concerned, improved a little bit since their first fight. So I want to say if they fought next, yes. But Tommy Fury has the opportunity to get active again and maybe change my mind. Yeah, I agree with you, Carlton Palmer. He says, forget about prison. Unless these old guys are fighting each other, then they'll get seriously hurt against a relatively competent young fighter. Completely agree. They should only be fighting each other. You know, like when Razor Ruddock fought James Toney? That was crazy. Did you guys see that? Razor Ruddock looked like a 70-year-old man in there. His movement and everything. Crazy. It looked like he was missing his walking stick, the way he was moving around the ring. Shout out to Hyro Protagonist. He says, yes, Hatman, lighten up my work day. Big up Hyro Protagonist. Tommy Fury got scared of Darren Till, says McLovin. Yeah, I mean, Darren Till managed to psych him out of the fight. And Till dealt with that fighter who did take a fight on short notice, to be fair. I forget his name now, that little short MMA guy who Darren Till stopped. That guy went the distance with Tommy Fury comfortably. But Darren Till dropped him and took him out. Forget his name now. Shout out to Matt again for the super chat. He says, I also think Sergio and Mannix are the worst duo boxing commentators on DAZN. They argue all the time. I hate it. I don't think they're that bad personally. I don't mind them. I'm certainly not putting them up there with the HBO team. Not even remotely close. Not in the same universe. And Mannix's scorecards, some of them at least, have been shockingly bad. Shockingly bad. But in terms of Mora, I don't mind Mora. I don't think he's terrible. But certainly not a standout. The box says I didn't answer his super chat. Okay, I must have missed it. Let me check it now. All right, shout out to the box for the super chat. It says, who wins, Dubois or Tim Witherspoon? You guys love giving me these really tough fantasy matchups because that is such a tough fight for me to call. Dubois versus Tim Witherspoon. I'm going to go with Tim Witherspoon. Yeah, I'm going to go with Witherspoon. And I'm not confident in that because Dubois fights at pace. He's got a great jab. He can hit. He can take a shot. He's two-handed. And in my view, I've said this many times before, the key to beating Daniel Dubois is to take away his offense. That's the key. That, I think, is why he mentally broke down against Joe Joyce and against Usyk. It's not because they were hitting him with a load of shots. Because we saw against Miller and against Hrgovic that hitting Dubois with a load of shots isn't necessarily going to deter him. It's when you hit him with a load of shots and he can't hit you back, that's when he starts to break down mentally, I think. Tim Witherspoon was never a defensive whiz. His defense wasn't terrible, but he was never like really good defensively. So I'm kind of hesitant to pick Witherspoon, but I might edge towards him. Because he was a good fighter. Maybe an underappreciated heavyweight. But I don't know. To me, it's almost a 50-50. I might edge just slightly towards Witherspoon, but not by much. But shout out to you for the super chat. That's a real tough matchup. You guys love giving me tough matchups in these fantasy fights. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, how excited are you for the return of Lampley for the May 2nd card? That's what I like, boy. Yeah, I spoke about that earlier on in the stream. As far as I'm aware, Lampley won't be doing commentary for DAZN unless, information has come out to the contrary. I'm assuming that he'll just be doing commentary for the Ring Magazine YouTube channel. Because if you saw him make the announcement, let me get the video up on screen here. This video he did, right? Where he announced he was doing the commentary for the May 2nd card. He said he'll be doing commentary for The Ring. The Ring have a YouTube channel. And Teddy Atlas did commentary on their channel for one of the recent cards. So I don't think he's going to be on DAZN. I stand to be corrected, right? If DAZN announced, yeah, Lampley's going to be part of our commentary team, then hey, it's all good. But I wouldn't get your hopes up just yet unless it gets formally announced by DAZN. Afro Jam says Mannix has no business being in boxing. Yeah, a lot of people don't like Mannix. Kyle says, Hatman, I got kicked out of uni. What should I do? Why did you get kicked out? And what were you studying? Iron Fist says Tim Witherspoon was quite good. Yeah, he was quite good. He had quite a lot of natural talent for boxing because, you know, had very few amateur fights. And relatively early on in his pro career, they threw him in with Larry Holmes, who was a vastly experienced champion. And Witherspoon held his own. So a lot of natural talent there for Tim Witherspoon. Kyle says low attendance and I was studying law. Well, I don't know obviously I don't know you as a person to be able to be definitive in what I'm about to say, but I think you might have made a good decision, to be honest with you. I think you might have made a good decision because in my experience, very few people who study law and get a law degree actually practice law, you know, professionally when they finish uni. And low attendance, presumably because you weren't interested and you had other things going on in life. I don't think the law degree is the best degree to get, to be honest with you. There are so many ways to make money now. Maybe your heart isn't in it. So, yeah, law is not a degree that I think is particularly valuable these days because so many people have law degrees. So many people have them. Yeah, Hyro Protagonist says, learn a trade or learn to make money online, you know, become an entrepreneur. Carlton Palmer says, don't mind Mannix on comms. And of course, with uni these days, you fall into massive debt. Massive debt. In my day, before the Blair regime came in, there was no debt. There was actually student grants where they would pay you to go to college and university. Now you pay them. So up until Blair came in the 1990s, you could go to uni completely for free. We've not come out of it with no debt. What Tony Blair did is he actually lowered the bar for acceptance into university because they had this ridiculous quota of getting like 50% of school leavers into uni. Folks, academic excellence is kind of similar to athletic excellence in the sense that not everybody is going to be equally as gifted. So imagine saying that they want 50% of school leavers to get into the Olympics. In order for 50% of school leavers to get into the Olympics, you would need to lower the bar, lower the standard in order to get that many people in the Olympics. Do you understand? And so that's what they did with uni, is like lower the bar to such an extent that they're all kind of just joke universities. They'll let anybody in to do degrees and they invent new degrees all the time. And a degree today doesn't mean what it did 35, 40 years ago. It's not as valuable as it was then. Back then, fewer people had degrees and they were more difficult to get. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now everyone's got one and it's like it loses its value because they lowered the bar. The Blair government were the ones mainly responsible for that, for lowering the bar and allowing just every Tom, Dick and Harry in university. Do you know what I mean? Back in the days, you had to have a certain amount of grades and like high grades and whatnot. Whereas today it's, yeah. better off doing something else. If your heart isn't in it, then there's no use getting into all that debt. So you might as well just stick with your decision, drop out, and do something else. Obviously, there are certain things you're going to need to go uni for if you're going to do engineering. If you're going to do a STEM, if you want a career in STEM, right? Then yeah, you're going to need to go uni. But outside of STEM, do you really need to go uni? I mean, if you've got a passion for maybe medicine or whatever, or if you've got a passion for law, but by the sounds of it, you didn't really have a passion for law. That's why you weren't attending. And so many people have got law degrees and they never end up practicing law. So yeah. Anyway, shout out to Matt for a super chat again. He says, honestly, Sean Porter's scorecards have been on another realm lately. Yeah, they have. Oh my gosh, Sean Porter has been smoking the hard food. Yeah, it's Afro Jam. Yeah, I mentioned that myself. He said they used to pay people to go uni. They did too, yeah. In my day, they'd pay you to go uni. They'd pay you to go college. Yeah, they would pay you to go college and pay you to go uni. So it's a totally different ethos now. Now it's about money making. And once it became about money making, there you see the incentive for them to lower the bar. You know? Getting 50% of school leavers into uni is insane. It's just a money-making exercise. It's not about academic excellence because, you know, how can 50% of school leavers be elite students? That's impossible because one thing defines the other. Before, uni was only for maybe, you know, the top 10 or 15% performing students, and that's how it should be. It should be for the best of the best. It shouldn't be for like any Tom, Dick, and Harry to go in there. Nah. Honestly, so one of the most absurd things ever, at to like 50% of school leavers should be in uni. They certainly shouldn't, because so many of them are just getting useless degrees anyway. Telstar says apprenticeship degrees are far better. I agree. All paid for by the company and actually hands-on experience and you get paid. Indeed. Some people asking me about the Crocker-Donovan fight. I still haven't seen it. I know the controversy. I saw the ending, but I didn't see the whole fight. Somebody asking me what I studied in college apart from psychology. I studied psychology and I also studied media and photography. So it was A-level psychology and a BTEC, yeah, BTEC national diploma in media and photography. That's what I studied. And the photography, well, that didn't really help me because we were using like analog cameras in college and nobody uses analog cameras anymore. So we were doing like, you know, processing the film in the dark room with the red light on and all that type of stuff. And nobody does that anymore. I mean, some enthusiasts still do that, but everything's digital now, right? Very few people use analog cameras these days. So the skills I learned there are kind of redundant. And the media stuff, you know, I took that course really because there was no space left on the music course in college because I wanted to do music, but everyone jumped on that. So I was too late. I missed the boat. So I took media because media had an element of music production in it, but not that much. There was like video editing and other kind of things in there, which again, we were using archaic gear. Obviously at the time it was contemporary gear, but nothing that will be relevant today because today all the editing is done on software and whatnot. So yeah, nothing really that has helped me in the real world in terms of what I studied in college, other than psychology. Yeah, the psychology has helped me in the real world because that was always something I was interested in and something I've continued to study off my own, just as a hobby, reading books about psychology and studying human psychology, all that kind of stuff, just as a hobby afterwards. And everyone, whether they realize it or not, is an amateur psychologist. You have to analyze human psychology every day. That's how you're able to interact with people in society appropriately. Yeah? If you see someone crying, really sobbing and upset, then your knowledge of human psychology tells you that you have to approach them differently than you would approach someone who looks happy. So we all study human psychology and human behavior all the time, in a kind of a passive way. So, yeah, I would say psychology is the only thing that really benefited me in terms of what I studied in college. All right, we've got another super chat here from Matt. He says, always wanted to watch a show called Boxing University, kind of the Contender, where basically they go through a boxing program through KOs. Huh? Explain that to me in more depth. You wanted to watch a show called Boxing University, kind of like the Contender. Okay, so this is like a hypothetical show where they go through a boxing program through KOs. The Contender put UFC on the map for their stars. Boxing would benefit greatly with a reality combat show. Hopefully TKO utilizes that. I suspect that they will, because with that WWE guy on board, Khan, they know all about building narratives and storylines and all that kind of thing, because that's what the WWE is all about, right? So using that narrative building expertise in boxing, you can see how that would work, So I'm sure there will be reality shows. I'll be surprised if they don't have them. I'm expecting them to. Ty Joseph says, I'm doing computer science at uni. That sounds like a more useful degree. Yeah, that sounds like a more useful degree. Computer science, Shout out to Matt again. He says, Zoomers and Gen X have low IQ, so those trash TV shows are great for them. Idiocracy is real. Let me read the rest of the super chat here, because Matt is coming for all the smoke. He wants all the smoke from the Zoomers and Gen X. He says they have low IQ, so those trash TV shows are great for them. Idiocracy is real. The human mind is becoming a glass of orange juice, people. Damn, Gen X. Well, I'm Gen X. I don't think I've got a low IQ. The cutoff for Gen X was like, I think 1981. So I think the Gen X is between about 1963 or 4 or 65, somewhere in the 60s up until 1981. That's Gen X. And then after that, from 81 to whenever it is, mid-90s, that's millennials. And then the one after that, I forget. Zennials or whatever. Now, Matt says, my only issue with TKO is whether the results of fights will be preordained or legitimate. Surely they'll be legitimate. Surely they'll be legitimate. Because, it needs to be the answer to a problem. That's the way that Dana White is talking up his foray into boxing. The boxing is broken and it needs to be fixed. Well, one of the things that fans complain about in boxing is quote unquote fixed fights, or at least fixed results. So for Dana White to come in and TKO and the results to be preordained rather than legitimate, they wouldn't be fixing anything, would they? So surely they'll be looking to be fairly decent when it comes to the judging. Linkage says, Hatman, would you say psychology is a good subject to study? I would say psychology is a good subject to study as a hobby, like informally. But studying psychology academically, I don't think it's a good thing. No, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it. Again, most people with psychology degrees do not become psychologists. That's the reason I say that. So I wouldn't recommend unless you've got a real passion for wanting to be a psychologist, then, go for it. But if you're kind of unsure and you think, oh, psychology seems cool, let me do that and get in a load of debt doing a psychology degree, I wouldn't recommend it. I would say, if you're not sure, do a STEM degree. Yeah, do a STEM degree. STEM degrees tend to be a lot more useful than humanities degrees. Okay, Matt with another super chat says he talks about making the fights, but where's Jones versus Aspinall? Yeah, some of the fights with UFC you would think should be made immediately, but they don't get made immediately. And that kind of goes against what they claim UFC is all about. But it's probably because they want to build certain fights up to maximize the revenue, right? Jimbo Jones says, Hatman not watching the boxing card tonight. Damn straight. Ayed says, I hated psychology in college. Just wasn't interesting. Maybe the teacher wasn't great. Well, from what I've heard, psychology today in college and university is primarily focused on statistics, on analyzing statistical data to do with human behavior and so on. That is very different to how psychology was taught when I was in college, because it was far more about psychoanalysis. And psychoanalysis is something I've always found interesting. But they've kind of steered psychology and academia away from psychoanalysis, and they're more dealing with statistics. I'm not saying that statistics have no place, because they're trying to, psychology can never be a science, but they're trying to make it a bit more science-y by analyzing statistics and all that type of stuff. But psychoanalysis is very, very relevant and useful as far as I'm concerned. If it wasn't, then why do criminal profiles use psychoanalysis so much? Criminal profilers use it so much. They don't rely purely on statistics. No, the best criminal profilers and all that are using psychoanalysis. And one of the reasons that I think they've steered away from like Freudian psychology and even Jungian psychology and psychoanalysis is because a lot of the stuff that Freud said in today's world is seen as politically incorrect. It doesn't mean Freud was right or wrong or whatever the case may be. It's up to the students to make their own minds up. That's what we were taught. When I studied psychology in college, one of the first things that our lecturer told us is that there's no right or wrong answers necessarily, because there are lots of different schools of thought in psychology. So he taught us about, Freud. That's one of the first things we learned about. And he said, it's up to you whether you take this stuff as, legit or you think it's rubbish. You make your own mind up. That's basically how we were taught about Freud. But today, there's like this black mark against Freud because the stuff he was saying was like misogynistic and outdated and, homophobic and so on and so forth. So they say they've literally thrown Freud out, from what I hear, in large measure, because it doesn't fit with the political zeitgeist of the day. Marlo says, Hatman, would you ever get a PhD? I've got no reason to do any form of education. I've been self-employed for well over a decade. I don't need any more education degrees or anything like that because I don't work for anyone. So it doesn't really benefit me, you know, certainly not at my age or at all. AE says Freud was a freak pushing all kinds of weird. Yeah, I'm very well aware of his family. His nephew was Edward Bernays, who they call the father of propaganda. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because if you've studied Freud, as I have, as well as the weird stuff in there, you know, like infant boys desiring their mothers and all kind of weird stuff, there was a lot of stuff in there that was very good. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But certainly, yeah, the Freud family are weird, for sure. You had Sigmund Freud, and then, as I say, his double nephew was Edward Bernays, who they used, you know, in inverted commas, the father of propaganda. And if you haven't read his book, that's a must read. He wrote many books, but one book in particular called Propaganda. He wrote that, I think, in the 1920s. Is it the 20s or 30s? It's quite a short book, but it's, you know, gives you a good insight into the mind and the reality of social engineers, these people behind the scenes, these Svengali type figures, like Bernays. So yeah, he was a relative of Freud. And then the co-founder of Netflix was also a relative of Sigmund Freud. He was he the grandson, or he was related to Bernays anyway. The co-founder of Netflix. I forget his name. Jack Hammer says, you ever go back as a bouncer? Hell, why would I go? I work for myself. Why would I go back as a bouncer? I'm not working for anyone. I haven't worked for anyone for like 14, 15 years or something. I'm not going back as a bouncer. Hell no. What would my life look like in my mid-40s going back being a bouncer? That's like, I'd feel like the ultimate failure. Hell no. Talk about going backwards. Wave says, wow, Hatman, Kell Brook actually got Ebony Bridges pregnant. She posted their newborn on her Instagram and tagged him. Yeah, I'd heard that as a rumor. Is that true? I mean, you say he's posted it. I'll have to look at it for myself. Kell Brook is a retired fighter. You know, if he wants to go breed up Ebony Bridges, that's his business. That's his business. I'm surprised he's got a girlfriend, to be honest. I know he was married before. I guess that marriage is done, but I thought if he was going to go anywhere other than with his wife, I'm surprised it's with another woman. I'll leave that there. 286 Project says, I think the creator of Netflix is related to Bernays. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier on. The co-founder of Netflix is part of the Bernays Freud family. I forget his name. McLovin says, all respect to the 40-year-old bouncers out there. Yeah, when I was a bouncer in my 20s, there were guys that I worked with who were in their 40s. And I just looked at them like, wow, I would never want to end up like you. To me, you know, at the time when I was a bouncer, it was only ever a stopgap. I never looked at bouncing like a career or so. I was like, hell no. Those guys who were like career doormen and were proud of being doormen and, you know, having this hard man image or some local heart. I was like, that's sad to me. It's corny and it's sad. It was just a bit of money when I was young. You know, I never saw it as any kind of career. Hell no. Hell no. Afro Jam says some of them roidhead bouncers live for trouble. Yeah. And if you're living for trouble on the doors, then you really don't have a life at all, do you? And that's the way I saw it when I was working with those kind of people. I was like, you must have no ambition in life if you live for having punch-ups in nightclubs as a bouncer. Roided up, you know, 18 stone of muscle, HGH, roids, and you're knocking out guys who are like, 12 stone. Well, you're a real tough guy, aren't you? I mean, come on, man. That's corny. Exactly. Iron Fist, these guys are proud to beat up drunk 25. Indeed. It's corny, man. I thought that when I was a bouncer myself. Do you know what I mean? Like, my whole mentality when I was a bouncer is I'm just coming here to get paid. I don't care about trying to be a hard man or anything like that, tough guy. I don't give a damn about any of that. When I would go do a shift, in my mind, I was like, I hope I don't have to hurt anyone, and I hope nobody hurts me. I just want to get my money, have an incident-free night and go home. That was it. I wasn't interested in any of the tough guy stuff. Obviously, I cracked quite a few skulls and, because I had to, because it was either me or them. There are some punters that put you in that position where they want to try you, or there's a fight that breaks out and you have to get involved and stuff like that. And it is what it is. I mentioned on the previous live stream, being a bouncer made me angry because I always felt threatened. Yeah? People on drugs and drunk and rowdy groups and all this type of stuff, who get belligerent with you and violent and stuff like that. And if it's a choice between me going to hospital or you, I'm going to try and make sure it's you. Do you know what I mean? But ideally, every single day before I would go to work and do a shift, I would be praying, please let there be no trouble. I don't want to have to hurt anyone, and I don't want anyone to hurt me. But some of these guys, it's absolutely true. I worked with them. They're praying for trouble. They want trouble when they go to work. These roid heads, HGH heads, they're praying for trouble. They like it. I never liked it. To me, it was a means to an end. Now, Jimbo Jones says, Kell Brook impregnating Ebony Bridges. I did not see that one coming. It is a bit random. Afro Jam says, Ebony Bridges was seen pregnant at the first fight of the year, the Callum Simpson card in Sheffield. Someone here saying that Johnny Fisher is rainbow. Is he? Also says that Dominic Ingle was seen in a Rainbow Club. That I can believe. But with Johnny Fisher, never heard that before. Okay, Stats, are you just trolling here? Johnny Fisher lives with Dominic Ingle? Since when? Matt says Kell still has his wife and kids on his Instagram whilst posting his baby with Ebony. What a complete mess. Yeah. It's a weird one, isn't it? But he's a retired fighter. That's his business. It's whatever to me. Can you guys do me a favor and stick a like on this stream? We've got 50 likes and 167 concurrent viewers. If you could all just take a split second to stick a like on this, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you in advance. It really helps with visibility for these streams. I like to keep the concurrent viewers to like ratio at around 50%. So we need about, 20, 30 more likes. Wave says, Hatman, have you ever tried fasting? Yes. Spoken about it on Patreon many times. Since I've reached my 40s, I've found that water fasting is the only real way to shift a lot of weight. The stuff I used to do in my 20s and even up to mid 30s doesn't work anymore to get weight off. Water fasting and hardcore no carb diets. Never mind low carb, no carbs. So when I go into a water fast, I'll come off carbs completely for maybe a month and then go into a water fast. McLovin says carnivore diet for the win. Well, right now, for the past month or so, I lose track of how long it is now. I'll tell you what I eat. The same thing pretty much every day. I eat poached eggs, and I don't cook the eggs all the way through. I leave them runny on the inside. My thinking is the more runny they are, the more nutrients I'm going to get. If I cook them all the way through, it's going to destroy a lot of the nutrients, right? And eggs, in my mind, I don't know whether there's any science to this, but in my mind, they'll help to regenerate the body because you're basically eating an embryo, right? That's what you're doing when you're eating eggs. Or what would have been an embryo anyway. So, yeah, poached eggs, spinach, and cheese. Sometimes feta cheese, other times, like cheddar cheese, which if I'm hungry, I'll have a bit of cheddar cheese here and there. I was eating one meal a day, but I found it really hard to do my training on the 1 meal a day thing. So I'm eating more like 2 meals a day now. But as I say, it's the same meal every time. Poached eggs, spinach, bit of feta cheese, and a couple times a week I'll have lamb chops. That's what I'm eating every day. Afro Jam says, are you not lactose intolerant? I am, but I don't tend to get symptoms with cheese unless I eat, too much of it. But when I eat, when I consume like milk, yeah, I can't do it. I get the bubble gut and as in, a bubbling feeling in my stomach, and I get mucus in the nose and all that type of business from milk. So I don't consume milk, but yeah, cheese I seem to be okay with. So I guess my diet would be, well, it's a ketogenic diet. Someone's saying I shouldn't overdo it with spinach. Kidney stones are a possibility. Yeah, I'm not worried about any of that. I'm not worried about none of that. I'm a very robust human being. I haven't seen a doctor in, how long has it been? 15 years? Afro Jam says, do you eat the spinach raw? Sometimes I eat it raw, and other times I steam it. Iron Fist says, feta cheese, you should try the traditional Greek salad recipe with feta cheese. Yeah, I just generally don't have much time to be making salads and all that type of stuff. One of the reasons I'm on the diet I'm on right now is because it's so quick and easy. Got an egg poacher, fling some eggs in there, a few minutes, they're poached. The spinach is either eaten raw or steamed, that's quick. And lamb chops, not too long in the frying pan. So it's nice and quick. I don't have time to be chopping up salads and all that type of business. Iron Fist says it's very easy to prepare, no worries. I'm sure it is, but time is so much of the essence for me that even the simplest of salads to me would be like, I can't be bothered. It's too fiddly and chopping tomatoes and this and that. I can't be bothered. Afro Jam talking about the lactose intolerance. Yeah, I am lactose intolerant, but I guess there are degrees of intolerance, right? When it comes to milk, I get bad gut. I get mucus when I consume milk. But cheese, I'm okay with. And yeah, it's true that generally people of African or West or Central African descent do tend to have higher rates of lactose intolerance. But there are plenty of people, I want to say it might be like 50% or 40 or 50% who have lactose intolerance. But then there's the 50% who don't. You know, there's a lot of Caribbeans that can drink milk no problem. They drink them, what's it called now? Nutriment. That Jamaican milk-based drink, Nutriment. They drink that all the time and they're cool. But yeah, that Nutriment used to mess me up something different. I think that might actually be when I really discovered I was lactose intolerant, because people were drinking Nutriment and I couldn't drink that stuff. It messed my guts up. But some Jamaicans drink that all day long with no problems. Well, talking about salads, there is, if you could call it a salad, is that the right way to describe it? A relish? I'm not sure how you describe it, but something in Central America which you find. In this country, they call it pico de gallo, which means beak of the rooster. Why they call it that, I've got no idea. Okay, no idea. In other Latin American countries, they call it flag sauce. I think that's what they call it in Mexico. They call it flag sauce because it's got the colors of the Mexican flag in it. And all it is basically is diced tomatoes with some onion and cilantro. Oh, using the American word. Coriander is the British word. So it's tomatoes, onions, coriander, and is there anything else in it? I think that's just it. And then like lime juice and a few bits of seasoning in there. It sounds simple, but it's actually really tasty. They serve that with, you know, tacos and burritos and all that kind of business. So yeah, pico de gallo. Nachos, yep. But you really haven't had burritos and tacos until you come to Latin America, you know? It's levels. Afro Jam says nutriment and now nourishment. Love it, but it will attack me from the inside. Indeed. Jordinio says, I'd implore anyone to try raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. They're so good for energy and focus. Yeah, I was having a lot of those a couple years ago, but as I say, because I'm on a ketogenic diet, I can't have any sugars, no kind of carbs or anything, even from fruit. And one of the things when you go on a ketogenic diet is you get hungry less often. Once you get into ketosis, yeah, you don't feel the need to be snacking all the time and all that type of business. And that's the good thing about being on a keto diet. Far less hungry. And you feel more satisfied, you know, after, because you're eating meals that are heavy in protein and sometimes fat. Like when I eat lamb chops, they're fatty. You know, I always look for the lamb chops with the most fat on them, because on a keto diet, you're using fat as fuel. Now, obviously, you don't want to have too much fat, because then your body will start burning the fat that you're eating rather than the fat on your body. But certainly when you're trying to get into ketosis, you want a high-fat diet because you're training your body to use fat as fuel. rather than using carbs as fuel. And so being on a high-fat diet initially will help your body transition. Marlo says, how many poached eggs are we having per meal? 4. So 4 poached eggs and spinach. Now, Jordinio says, wow, Hatman. Wow, big up on that, Hatman. I can give up chocolate, but I need the fruit sugar fix. Yes, sugar is addictive. People don't talk about sugar addiction. You know, they talk about smoking addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, all kind of addictions, but very rarely do they talk about sugar addiction. I suspect sugar addiction is the most common addiction. So many people are actually addicted to sugar. And you'll literally have withdrawal symptoms if you come off it, you know, not just the cravings for it, but like the shakes, and people can get the shakes and all sorts of stuff coming off sugar. So sugar addiction is a big, big, big thing. And when I say sugar addiction, carbs really are an addiction to some extent, you know, carb addiction, because carbs, as I understand it, turn into sugar in the body. At least some types of carbs do. Guryon says foods like crisps and chocolate are very addictive. Yeah, they are. They really are. McLovin says, I'd say caffeine is probably the most popular addiction. I reckon sugar addiction is more common than caffeine addiction, because if you think of the amount of kids that don't really drink coffee, but they're constantly consuming sugar all the time. There are loads of people that don't drink coffee or tea, but they eat chocolate all the time and sweets. And do you know what I mean? So I suspect that sugar addiction is actually the most common addiction. But because it's so common, people don't realize it's an addiction. Do you know what I mean? PGMC says it takes tremendous discipline to cut out processed foods. Respect. You know what it is? You got to be in the right mind frame, because there have been other times in my life when I tried to cut these things out and I couldn't do it. But there are certain periods where, for whatever reason, I get into a certain mood and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go on this diet, and it's easy. So when I started this ketogenic diet, it wasn't hard at all. You know what I mean? I didn't find it difficult in the slightest. It really didn't take discipline for me to do this diet, to be honest with you, because I was just in the right mind frame to start it. It's like when they say that there's no courage without fear. Yeah, if you do something dangerous and you're not afraid, then you're not really showing courage. Do you know what I mean? The courage is to be able to overcome the fear. So the same kind of situation with me on the keto diet. It's like, I wouldn't really say it's taken a lot of discipline, because it wasn't hard for me to do it psychologically, you know? But shout out to you anyway. Tony says, Hatman, I do carnivore diet, steak, eggs, high-fat beef mince, raw milk, everything cooked in butter or beef. Yeah, it's very similar to what I'm doing. I'm doing the eggs, the spinach, and as I say, the lamb chops, which are high-fat. And yeah, everything cooked in butter or beef fat. Yep. Now, as for diets in general and what people should be eating in general, there's no one-size-fits-all diet. And I think a lot of people also don't pay enough attention to their phenotype. So if you are indigenous to Europe, your ancestors for thousands of years were eating a particular diet and their bodies became accustomed to that diet, and therefore your body may perform best and be healthiest on a diet similar to your ancestors. But if you're someone whose, you know, genetic lineage is in Africa or in China, then your body might be more designed for the diet of your ancestors in that continent. You see what I'm saying? So there's no one-size-fits-all diet that's going to be best for everybody. I think you really need to look into, in terms of long-term, right? Because the diet I'm on is a weight loss diet. Once I get back to eating normally again, I'm not going to be eating the same things. So, one thing that a lot of people don't think about, for example, is eating fruits and vegetables in season. Because with supermarkets and, imported goods and all that type of stuff, people are eating foods out of season. There might be something to only eating fruits in season. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the way your body reacts. Because certainly in Europe, you've got the seasons of the weather, right? The earth and whatnot. So your body might process these things differently in different weather conditions. Goyon says, when you stay on a strict diet, the rare cheat meals feel much better because they are rare. Well, not the last water fast I went on, the one before that, I water fasted for a week. When I came off the water fast, the meal I had tasted like the best thing I'd eaten in my entire life. It was basically like some kind of kebab, like grilled lamb meat and stuff. And when I ate that, it was like the best food I'd ever tasted in my life, having not eaten for 7 days. Do you know what I mean? The flavor was so intense because nothing had touched my lips other than water for 7 days. So when I was eating it was incredible. So you definitely appreciate food more coming off a water fast, I can tell you that. Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to there, Scouse Farm. Scouse Farm says fruit is designed to be eaten in summer in order to gain weight for the winter. Eat when it's available, avoid when it isn't. But that's the thing, it's available year round now, isn't it? Because of importing and whatnot. So people are eating fruit out of season. Jordan EO says, can someone explain a typical water fast? Never heard of it. A water fast is simply not eating or drinking anything other than water. That's all a water fast is. So you don't eat or drink anything other than water. And that is, I've found in my 40s, the only surefire way of losing weight. A good amount of weight is going on water fasts, But you do your own research on it. I'm not telling you to do anything because people say it's dangerous and all that. So it's your body, your health. You look into it for yourself, right? That's my disclaimer. But for me personally, I found it to be very effective. Paul says, did you take electrolytes during it? No. No electrolytes, just water. Nothing else. And McLovin says, only managed to do a 3-day water fast. On day 3, I was going mentally insane. Well, in my experience from water fasting, you need to get yourself in ketosis first before you start the water fast. If you go from being on carbs, right, and then trying to go straight into a water fast, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And you may encounter problematic symptoms, right? Your body might start doing weird stuff. So if you're going to do it, I would recommend getting into ketosis first. Cutting all carbs out first before you go into a water fast. And that may take 2 weeks. It might take a month. To be on the safe side, I would say do a month. to get yourself into ketosis. No fruit, no sugar of any kind. The only liquid you're consuming is water. No carbs at all. Absolute ketosis. That is what I would say, that works best for me, is when I get into ketosis first before going on to a water fast. If you try coming from consuming loads of carbs, going into a water fast, it's going to be rough. It's going to be very rough. Shout out to Mr. Classic Metal for the super chat. He says, worthless degrees, culinary fashion, theater, history, religion, liberal arts, anthropology, archaeology, ethnic studies, journalism, tourism. Yeah, you're probably not going to make much money with those degrees, right? In most cases. Then again, the way government is these days, they make up ridiculous positions within the civil service, don't they? Like ridiculous jobs that don't need to exist. They create them in the civil service now and pay you 60, 70 grand a year. So maybe one or two of those degrees actually are useful. As far as making money. First Round Boxing says, when you're not dieting, what are your favorite junk foods? I'm not really a sweet tooth person. I don't dislike sweet foods, but I've never been somebody that's really addicted to sweet stuff. So I'm not really a big chocolate eater or, stuff like that. My Achilles heel, or however you want to describe it, when it comes to food, is more savory food. So, burgers. I do like a good burger. Chips, French fries, stuff like that, pizza, things like that. I'm not a particularly fussy eater. So I like lots of different types of food. Chinese food, damn near anything, Italian food, all types of African food, which is full of carbs with the rice and different types of bread. Turkish food is great. Arabic food, all sorts. I'm someone that is a foodie, I guess. I like eating food from different countries all around the world. I get bored eating the same thing over and over again, although on this keto diet, let's see how long I can last. At the moment, I'm not yet bored. Been doing it at least a month, maybe more, maybe 6 weeks I've been on this, and I'm not yet bored. But generally, I get bored of foods quite quickly. Kyle says networking is probably the real reason people go uni. In America, it's even more of a thing, isn't it? Networking. If you can become a member of one of the fraternities in America, when they go to what they call college, but in the UK it would be university. Some of the institutions in America are called universities, but anyway, they generally call it college, higher learning college, and their fraternities out there are powerful. So if you manage to get into one of their fraternities, the networking that you can do in the fraternity, you can get, great jobs afterwards and all that type of business. And they kind of maintain these networks that they establish through the college fraternity, long into adulthood. And they do have that in some of the elite institutions in Britain, like Cambridge, obviously, and Oxford have their, what's the Cambridge one? Is it the Bullingdon Boys Club? Is that actually Cambridge? Or is it Eton College? It's the one that David Cameron went to anyway, the Bullingdon Boys Club. They have these fraternities. Okay, that's Eton, says Scouse Farm, Eton College. Paul says, Hatman, do you drink tea and coffee? No, I don't. Although, You know, I'm more inclined to drink. I literally never drink. I can go years without ever drinking coffee or tea. But again, you haven't had coffee until you come to Latin America. Then you'll taste real coffee. Coffee with no aftertaste. Have you guys ever had coffee with no aftertaste? If you haven't, then yeah, in Latin America, bro, you're going to taste the most incredible coffee you've ever had in your life. Literally no bitter aftertaste. It's like you drink it and you're like, damn, that's smooth. You're waiting for the bitter aftertaste and it never arrives. Like, wow, let me take another sip. I don't know how they do it or why it's a thing, because anywhere else in the world outside of Latin America, the coffee's got an aftertaste. But in Central America, hey, the coffee is as smooth as anything. Yeah, and generally in terms of taste, I think coffee tastes better than tea, especially good coffee. Afro Jam says you drank real Blue Mountain coffee. And you just take it for granted here. You know what I mean? Because it's like all the coffee in most of the places you go is like that. It's proper smooth. There's no bitter aftertaste. It's like when you go to the Middle East and have dates. Yeah? You know, the fruit dates. You've never had dates until you go to the Middle East. Yeah? Because the dates are like literally falling off the trees all around you when you're walking about. And they've got different species of dates. And when I was living out there, a man would come around every, a couple of times a week, knocking door to door with like a wheelbarrow full of dates that just came off the tree. And they hit different to anything you'll ever buy outside of the Middle East. I'm telling you. Okay, the dates fresh off the tree do not taste like the dates you get from the supermarket. Trust me. They hit totally different. So you have to go to where these things are actually grown to taste the elite stuff. So coffee obviously is grown in Central and South America. So that's where you go for proper coffee. Dates, yeah, you need to go to the Middle East for dates, mate. The dates in the Middle East were so elite, and they have different varieties of dates. You know, so, some of them are like almost yellowy in color and small, and you can get most of them in, let's say, Britain, but they just don't taste the same. Trust me, they do not taste the same. You have to go there to the Gulf states and have the dates fresh off the tree. It tastes different. And they've got like really big dark ones. I'm not sure what variety they are. The small yellow ones, they got different. You learn to notice the difference in the way the dates look when you live out there, because there are so many different types and they all taste a bit different, you know. But there's one type, again, I couldn't tell you what they're called, but they're yellow. They're not dark brown color. They're like a yellow color. And even when they're ripe, they kind of go a very light brown. They never really go dark. Linkage says it's the same with all fruits. Yeah, it is. Like mangoes in pretty much every Western country are awful. I never would touch mangoes in Western countries. Even if you go to the boss man, you know, the corner shop where he's imported some mangoes from wherever, India or Pakistan, most of them are just rubbish, man. They don't taste like mangoes that you get in the Caribbean or in Africa or in Asia. Trust me. Now, I'm going to contradict myself slightly because when I was living in the Middle East, they managed to import mangoes from India and Egypt and Pakistan and Kenya, which were fire. Oh my God, they were fire. Like, I used to go to a supermarket. There's a big supermarket chain, which I think is an Indian supermarket chain. But when I was living in the Middle East, there's a chain called Lulu Hypermarket. Yeah, Lulu Hypermarket. Massive, huge supermarkets. Enormous. These hypermarkets they have in those Gulf countries are crazy. Yeah. It's called a hypermarket, not a supermarket for a reason. But anyway, their mango section during mango season in the summer, bro, it smelled incredible. And they had these mangoes there, these yellow mangoes that I was getting when I was living out there. I swear to God, these mangoes were as sweet as ice cream. You know, vanilla ice cream? That's how these mangoes were. There was no bitterness to them at all. It was literally, you cut it open and scoop out and they were big too. You scoop out the flesh and it was like eating ice cream, bro. That's how sweet it was. And there was no fibers in between your teeth. Because sometimes you get mangoes and there's fibers all up in your teeth. No, these mangoes had like this smooth, not fibrous flesh. And it was as sweet as damn ice cream, I swear to God. Crazy. And they smelled so strong in terms of the sweetness of the smell. When you would just get near the mango aisle, you got hit with this like sweet, overwhelming sweet smell. Man, the mangoes were crazy, bro. Best mangoes I ever had in my life. I'm pretty sure they were Pakistani or Indian mangoes that they got over there, you know. And yeah, unbelievable, elite. The best mangoes I've ever had in my life. Afro Jam says they don't need to travel as far. Indeed, yeah, because, you know, Pakistan, not too far from the Gulf states. And trust me, even now I still think about them mangoes. They were so elite, it was ridiculous. And after having them mangoes, when I returned to the UK, I never touched a mango ever again. Because seriously, the mangoes in the West, they are not mangoes, bro. Like, I don't know what they are, but they taste bitter. They're barely sweet at all. Same thing with watermelons. You know, when you get watermelons from the countries they're grown in, they are so sweet. So sweet. The flesh on the inside is like deep red, almost blood red. And the sweetness is crazy. I mean, big up Charles B in the chat. Grand says watermelon in Uganda are God tier. I believe you. Charles B says, reminds me of lemons in the, what was that? The Amalfi Coast in Italy. Next level. Could eat one like an apple. 100%. In the Mediterranean, olives are going to be elite. Citrus fruits are going to be elite. Tomatoes are going to be elite. Big up Deej channel. Is that how you pronounce the first name? Deej? Is it Deej? Deej? Big up. First round boxing says ham in Italy is next level. Different species of pig, I think, in Sicily anyway. That's a very good point. S says, imagine if all the fruit in the UK was that good, no one would be eating sweets. That's a whole fact. That is a whole fact. When you go to these hot countries, their fruits are so sweet, bro, you don't need to touch chocolate. I'm telling you, them Pakistani mangoes, bro, I'll never forget them until I eat them again sometime. I've never really wanted to go back to the Middle East, but if there was a reason for me to go back there, it'd be to try them mangoes again, bro. Them Pakistani mangoes were crazy. They were big as well. They weren't like the little small yellow ones that Bossman sells in London or whatever. These were like big mangoes, no fibers, so they didn't get stuck in your teeth. And the flesh, the smell was so strong. You know, like when you go to a shop in London, right? And you're looking at mangoes, you got to pick the mango up and smell it where the stem bit was attached to see if there's any sweetness to the smell. With these ones, bro, you could smell the damn mangoes from 20 meters away. They smelled that sweet. I'm not even exaggerating. You'd smell them before you even see the mango aisle because the sweet smell was so strong. And then these mango, you cut the thing out and it was like as sweet as ice cream. I kid you not. Crazy. You put them in the fridge to get cold and literally eat that like ice cream, bro. Crazy. Deej says, is Turkey going to bypass the Muhammad Ali Act? Well, it seems as though in order to make this venture, this boxing league with Dana White work, then that's what they may have to try and do. But I always like to point out that the Muhammad Ali Act is only ever applied in America. So just to point out that in British boxing, there is no Muhammad Ali Act. Because I get why people are concerned. I'm concerned about them trying to circumvent or get the Muhammad Ali Act removed. But as concerned as I am, there's never been a Muhammad Ali Act in the UK. Right? So that, danger or whatever of not having a Muhammad Ali Act in place has always been there in Britain. Anyway, peeps, gonna wrap this one up here. Been streaming for just under 2 hours. Like to shout out to everybody. It's an earlier one today. May stream later on as well. We shall see. But yeah, make sure you guys have a good day. Be good. Take care. And I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.